take up any more of people's time. Everybody, welcome Nick. Any questions, stick around afterwards. Keane will be asking the questions that you give Nick, and I can jump in every now and again, but enjoy it, and thanks a lot for sticking around. Appreciate it. Bye.
Can you guys see that screen okay, the slideshow?
Yeah, perfect, Nick.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thanks, Fabio. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be on your fantastic page. So yeah, I'm just going to go over today my coaching philosophy, but it's more about just developing a coaching philosophy. I'm just going to use mine as an example, and for anyone that's following my page, give you a bit of an understanding of what the content is about and why it's there. So we're going to start just quickly with the objectives. Developing competence, autonomy, and purpose. My philosophy is called the thinking cap. So it's competence, A, the autonomy, and P, the purpose. The reason why I follow this philosophy is that it allows me to just stay aligned with everything that I believe in, and also it allows me to reflect and review after the lesson, making sure that I was able to be effective with my delivery of the sessions. Also, we're going to look at importance of developing receiving skills, which again is very much the efficiency. So a lot of people might ask, you know, why are you doing that movement? Why are you doing that skill? It looks a bit strange. How's that relating to tennis? So we're going to go over all of that as well. We'll also look at tactics first, not just hitting balls, and how the content that I'm going to supply you is relevant to the tactics as well. We're also going to look at keeping kids in tennis and the elements of a really good program. So a program is not fully just about lessons. It's about everything that's involved, whether it's the parent communication, the social elements, the competition is the main driver, and also practice sessions as well. So let's start with competence coaching considerations. The first one is there's 4 stages of competence. Now, I just posted last night on my page what those 4 stages are. So I'll very briefly go over them now. If you want a little bit more detail about that, you can go into my page and see that. So the first stage is unconscious incompetence. So what that means is they don't understand that there's a need for the skill, and they don't understand the relevance of it or why they're doing it. So it could be something like you're trying to teach a forehand, and they don't understand how to do a certain shape or why they're doing it. So the second stage, so I didn't need to do that slide. The second stage is conscious incompetence. So they know what they're supposed to do. They understand the relevance of it, but they still can't quite do it because they don't have the skill. The third stage is conscious competence, which means they can do it. They see the relevance. They understand why they're supposed to do it. They can do it, but it requires real thought and focus and concentration. So this is a really good place to be. This is when the learning really occurs. And then the fourth stage is unconscious competence, which means that they're just in an automatic state of learning. Again, I go into a little bit more detail with that on my page. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'm happy to go through that as well. We're going to look at ages and stages considerations. We're also going to look at gender considerations. And we're also going to look at coaching methodology as well. Okay. So before we do that, I just want to show you a little video of, it just sort of sums up kind of what I do. And I want to give you a little bit of a feel for a tennis journey that I'd like to get kids under. So, I mean, in regards to outcomes, I've had maybe around about 18 national champions, a whole bunch of European champions, and then we're looking at like 100, well, not 100, but many top players that got the top 100 in the ITF and also WTA and ATP points. But more importantly than that, my coaching philosophy is around getting kids from sort of A to B. So this video, kind of this, hopefully you can hear the sound in it, but this video really sort of sums up 2 kids, young boy, young girl, started when they were 9 and 6 years old. I still coach them now, and this is 8 years later. So I'm just going to get you guys to watch this video, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a narrative of what's going on. Let's hope it. So that video was actually taken by the parent of those two kids without me actually knowing that he was doing it. So he was taking photos over all the past 7 years, and he put it together as kind of like almost like a gift to say, hey, thanks for the job you did. So I always felt a little bit emotional when I watched that, because he sent it to me about 6 months ago, and both of the kids were in different stages, obviously, but the young boy was a little bit more outgoing, and Hannah was very much very closed, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't even look me in the eye, just look at the ground. So had very little confidence. So that's a great video, because it just, you can actually start to see the players evolving in front of you, not just technically and tactically, but physically as well. So that was quite an honor to get that video, for the fact that he was creating more of a story, not just about their tennis, but about how tennis is enriched their lives. So ages and stages that we need to consider with both of these children, for example, but any child is like 5 to 7 years old. These are typical, so these are generalizations. So very much 5 to 7, very me focused, believes the world revolves around them. I have both a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. So I've seen these stages through firsthand as well. So it's quite interesting. There's an imitation and learning through play. So a lot of these kids, like, no one really likes to be told what to do anyway, but especially at this age, they're very much kinesthetic and visual learners. So if you're talking for too long, they'll very quickly switch off. So trying to understand that part is very important. Tactically focused on themselves and the ball, not so much about the opponent. So when you're watching in the kind of early stages, they'll tend to think about how they're playing, but not really look down the other end and consider what the opponent is doing. At age 7 to 9, they can start to relate to others, starts to understand concepts. So if you're going into concepts a little bit too early, again, they'll be looking at you with a real blank look, not really understanding what you're talking about. Also, aspirational can relate to pro players as heroes and role models. That tends to happen more around 7 to 9. Again, that's not the same for everybody. You know, some kids will pick up a racket for the first time and they'll just be absolutely hooked. The majority of kids that I work with, I've been working for 6 years now, normally take a little bit longer for that to happen. So 7 to 9 is a key. You kind of want them to start watching a little bit more tennis, because they're probably going to be a little bit more interested in pro players as heroes, rather than the 5 to 7 age. It's more like superheroes is probably their heroes, and maybe dad or mum. Age 9 to 10 understands the benefits of learning far more, can start to identify what they do well, regardless of the result, and they start to separate effort and ability. That's a huge one, especially in the younger age. We want those kids to work hard, but a lot of the time they just really don't understand it. So there's a lot of teaching in the sort of 5 to 9 about what actually effort and ability really is. These again are generalizations. So gender, society encourages boys to stand out and be number one, be tough physically and emotionally. As you can see, that's quite difficult, because if you're getting some boys who, you know, maybe are emotionally not the typical guy, you know, we treat them like they should be tough. Solve problems, be single-minded and focus on the task, and value winning over relationships. Again, these are generalizations, so you might be looking at it and go, hang on, I coach a boy that's not like that at all, but that's generally how society sees them. And trust logic. Now with the girls, is to fit in, get what you want indirectly, being tough is unfeminine, be relationship orientated, be reserved, look good, and be polite. Now, my daughter is very few of those. For example, she's 8 years old and she plays with the boys at school. She's into superheroes, and I embrace that. I don't try to tell her what she should be as a female. You know, I want her to be herself. So it's important to know what society sees as the genders, but we're also looking at where these kids currently are. And also trust feelings and intuition is quite often a common trait for the young girls. And coaching methodologies, so the non-negotiables, and my particular coaching philosophy is, was the activity engaging and enjoyable? Was there plenty of repetition of motor skill? And we'll get into that again more towards the end of the presentation, because the motor skill is very much the efficiency. If the child is efficient, they'll be able to keep the ball in play. If they're effective, they could tend to do a little bit more with the ball. So it tends to be a bit more racket work. But the majority of the stuff that you're going to see on YouTube or social media is heavily based around sending the ball. But if you can't find the ball, it's very hard to send it. So we need to have an understanding of motor skills and can the kids possess that. Some kids naturally have it better than others initially, but with the right attitude, skill can be developed pretty easily. Was there some form of decision making? Now we know that tennis is an open skilled sport and requires you to make decisions. So does the coaching allow them to make some decisions? I mean, if you're doing basket drills and things like that, it's probably limited, but there is a place for that. But where in your coaching, is there some form of decision making? Did the activity tennis drill relate to the game of tennis? Okay, so you see a lot of games out there have been quite fun. You can go on YouTube and you can go all over the place and see lots of exercises that look kind of fun and the kids kind of enjoy, but ultimately if they're not improving their ability to play the game of tennis, you might not find them in the sport for very long. So it's probably not the best business model. Was the environment emotionally and physically safe for participants? Then we look at a technique-centered approach, which is focusing on developing technique as the central feature of the activity. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but is there plenty of motor skill development in the program? And then you've got the game-centered approach, which focuses on developing the rally as the central feature of the activity. Here's another quick video just to go over coaching methodology a little bit from what I do, and hopefully this will give you a few ideas. This is one of my students called Lucy, and this actual particular lesson, or part of the lesson, was actually initiated by her. So she did a tournament, and I encouraged them to write letters to me about what I need to help them. So I tell them that they're the CEO of their own tennis company, and I'm just a worker. I'm a consultant. I'm somebody that can really help them if they want me to. So she's wrote a letter, and she's told me that she wanted to work on being more aggressive from all areas of the court, and she wanted to start with a drive volley, because in her matches she was letting it all bounce because she wasn't brave enough to take it out of the air. So here's a little segment here where you can see some relevance to what she wanted. So we're just starting with just finding the ball and catching it at a height that she wants to strike it at, looking at little steps and big steps. And so really with the movement, it should look like you've got multiple personality movement disorder, rather than having these little pretty steps. You're going to go from big steps to aggressive steps to calm steps. And sort of that's what we're looking at. So think of it like multiple personality disorder movement. So it should be very messy and chaotic at times. You can see here there's no real consistency with the footwork, but there is a powerful first step coupled by little adjustment steps. So she's learned that through motor skill development. So this is just the actual shot in isolation. So she's just working on a drive volley, and as soon as possible, swing volley, depends on how you want to call it. And as soon as possible, we're going to get this into a game situation. She wanted to do it from the serving, so I'm just going to, she makes a decision where she goes. On the first shot, she doesn't make a decision, but after that, she does. Should be showing off a little bit. Got to have my moments. She exposes my lack of speed. Getting older and slower. She's getting smaller and quicker. So she's getting bigger and faster. Again. Okay, so the second part of the coaching philosophy is autonomy coaching. It's not in any particular order, but this is a really important part as well. So creating a sense of choice. So again, in that video, you can see she got to choose parts of her lesson. I will then advise, I can then come in and advise and say, hey, look, I don't know if that's worth your time. So we can have a chat about that. Developing intrinsic motivation. So for example, my daughter had no interest in playing tennis about 18 months ago. So at that point she was 7. And her motivation at the time was just to come and play with me, and then we have some food afterwards. And now that's sort of developed into tennis is now her #1 sport. She loves it. She practices by herself, and she drags me out to the tennis court after long stints of being on court with others. So that motivation has definitely flipped. She's gone from extrinsic to intrinsic. So again, you've got to bear with them a little bit, understand the ages and stages, understand who they are, and understand that we can't force this on them. We know we've got to just keep tennis fun, and hopefully they'll follow your lead a little bit. So that's quite a good example there that my daughter has done that. And if any of you follow my page, you'll start to see quite a bit of her progress lately, and you can see the enjoyment and the she's obviously enjoyed it far more when she's got better. Like, does anyone really enjoy something that much when they're not very good at it? So obviously the better you get, the more you enjoy it. Owning and taking responsibility of your practice, and developing a pathway of courage. So courage is probably one of the most toughest emotions to control. So there's a lot of chat in the autonomy part about courage and what things are they doing on a daily basis to control that emotion. And the third part is the purpose. So this is the completion of the thinking cap, the purpose. Why are you here? And I say that to kids, and I try and say that without being really rude. It's like, what are you doing here? What do you want? What do you want to get out of this? You know, why are you playing? Is it to hang out with your friends? Do you have ambitions to be a professional tennis player? Are you doing it with Hannah and Roger? You know, in the video that you can see, their passion and their goals changed over time. So quite often the passion of the coach can destroy the child's experience. So again, with the young girl Hannah, when she couldn't look at me, I could straight away saying, hey, look, that's not how you act. You should look at me when you're talking to me and when I'm talking to you and blah, blah, blah. But again, my passion could destroy the child's tennis experience because I'm too forceful of what I want them to be, not what they want to be. The dynamic vision, as I was just saying before, as the student becomes more experienced, the vision needs to be modified as change occurs. So possible more ambitious goals to be voiced. So initially they might come in for the fact they just want to try a new sport. If you're doing a great job and you've sold the whole let's play tennis rather than just have lessons, and they're getting out there and they're playing with mum and dad and they're starting to watch tennis and they're going through those stages, then they might shift from I just want to play a little bit of tennis to get fit to now I want to be a professional tennis player. I want to play American college tennis or things like that. So again, that will often come through improvements as well. As the kids get better, they might start to go, you know what, I didn't initially get into tennis for this reason, but now my goals have changed. So you know, you do need to keep up with that and find out, are they still in the same mindset as they were when they started? Have their goals changed? Do they have different views on their tennis journey? Learning court and practice court, what's the difference? You know, so are you giving the kids, is the purpose just to have lessons, or is the purpose just to play? There is a difference between a learning court and a practice court. A practice court, they might want to explore a little bit more, and maybe you need to give them time to do that, and they get to play their matches and they get to organize their own practice. When on the learning court, it might be a little bit more structured. You know, you might show them that, you know, these are things that you really need to work on, and I'm giving you a say in that as well with part of the autonomy. But is there a learning court and a practice court? Programs and pathways, what's the difference? Again, I don't like the word pathway really, because it kind of makes you feel like you should be going on a certain route, and often the coaches can make that a bit blurry. But the programs is more like, okay, so instead of thinking pathways, maybe think islands. So on this island, it's more fun and social. On this island, it's a little bit more competitive, and maybe on this island, it's more edgy and there's more ambition there. So making sure that the kids are in the right program is absolutely vital to align with their own purpose. And we'll just quickly go into receiving skills. I'm just a little bit wary of time and everybody else's time. With receiving skills, these are considerations. What is the shot cycle in tennis? There's always a ready position. There's always a reading of the ball. There's always a reacting with your body. And then there's obviously the racket part where you make a decision on what you're going to do with your racket. Is it going to be a bigger take back? Is it going to be a shorter take back? Or what type of movement are you going to create with the racket? But that all comes through a shot cycle. And obviously the fifth R is recover. So again, it's reading the ball, reacting to where it's going, ready position, reading, reacting, racket, and then recover. So does your receiving skills exercises, do they incorporate the shot cycle, or are they in isolation? If they are in isolation, maybe it's because you want to work on a specific movement, a specific type of receiving skill, but as much as possible, try and get that whole shot cycle of A to B to A. I start in A, I go to B where the ball is, and I go back to A. Differential learning, again, this is a big sort of topic in itself. Diversification versus specialization. You know, if you can make them as diverse as possible, if you can create as many different movements as possible, they're more likely to be adaptable. And we know that tennis is an open skilled sport. So if you specialize too early in regards to making the movements exactly the same over and over again that are just exactly like tennis, then you know, when a ball comes and it skids on the ground on an astro grass court or on a clay court and it bounces high, do they have the ability to track a ball and adapt to the ever-changing nature of receiving? If you are hand feeding the ball at waist height and it looks perfect and it's not chaotic enough, and there's not enough differential learning where there's differences in the way the ball's coming and the way it's sending, you're possibly detraining the child to I call it the, well, I don't call it, my mentor, Mike Barrell, would talk about it, calling it the master of illusion. So if you're feeding a ball at waist height, it's absolutely perfect the whole time for 100% of the training, you're creating this illusion that they've got this perfect forehand. But we know that the ball is never going to come back the same way. It's going to come back in different heights, different spins, and different directions, and different distances. So, you know, are you training them to be able to play to the nature of tennis? So fundamentals develop efficiency. So that could be fundamentals in receiving skills. It could be fundamentals in technique. So and physical skills. So the efficiency there is the ability to find the ball and do the basics right. So find first, feel second. So can they find the ball? Can they find the ball? Once they can, they're going to have a little bit more understanding and a bit more skill around feeling the ball. Here's another quick video, guys, of just a little bit of an example of differential learning. I could probably talk you through this rather than just save a little bit of time. Call it beat the bounce. So the first ball I've got is just a standard tennis ball. So a little bit easy to start with. She has a recovery position where she goes back to. So she starts in A, there's B, and she goes back to A. So A to B to A. So the shot cycle is here without the racket part, obviously. Now I feed her a crazy ball, a reaction ball. So the bounce is unpredictable. So now she has to react and she make an adjustment with her body. So it's a little bit more chaotic, like tennis. So she thinks she's got the bounce, and then she has to quickly adapt and react, which is a motor skill that's absolutely vital in tennis. She didn't quite react to that one. And now she's got a ball in her hand, so looking at it like a grip change. So she's getting to the habit of changing her grip. Ball goes to the right, she finds the ball with the right hand, right foot. And the ball goes to the left, she finds it with the left hand and the left foot. So it's a good example of differential learning. This is a real basic example of differential learning. Some of the other stuff that you'll see on my page is a little bit more funky than that, a little bit more bit crazy. Now, I'm a big fan of Wayne Eldington. If anyone knows Wayne Eldington, he made a great statement the other day, and I changed it slightly, and he was quite happy with it. So I'm taking one word out of the statement: that solve and create problems by controlling space and time to maintain your timing and break your opponent's timing. So that's the purpose of tactics. So if we look at the controlling space and time, now, if you don't have very good receiving skills, you're going to find it very hard to control space and time in regards to receiving the ball. So my job ultimately as a tennis player is trying to screw up your timing, and you're trying to screw up mine. And we spend maybe 3 hours trying to figure that out. So again, we go back to the autonomy. Are the kids able to solve problems? And if they're not able to solve problems by themselves, you're probably creating a little bit of scaffolding coaching where you're just propping them up. But when it comes to a match, and if they don't have any autonomy or they don't have the understanding of basic tactics, they are going to fall over pretty quickly. That scaffolding, the building's going to come down and they're going to look pretty lost. They're going to be looking up you up in the stadium going, please help. And you're like, oh, I probably should. Well, I'm not allowed to, so I'm not going to. or maybe you do, and they get penalized or whatever. But solve and create problems by controlling space and time to maintain your timing and break your opponent's timing. So I feel that's a really good way to summarize what tactics really are. So obviously the most basic tactic is over and in. Once you're efficient at doing that and you're more effective with the ball, you can start to do things more with the ball where you can make the ball go higher, or you can make it go faster. That's gonna break someone's timing. Can you manipulate the height of the ball? That's going to break someone's timing potentially. But at the same time, you're trying to maintain your own. So if you're not able to find the ball properly, it's going to be very hard to maintain your own timing and control your own space if you don't know how to receive the ball properly. Again, some people pick up receiving skills very, very quick, some don't. So we do need to consider that. So tactics first teach the game. So efficiency is the fundamentals. Effectiveness is what the ball does and what you can do to the ball. Technique is only to serve a purpose to tactics. So again, the better my technique, obviously the better I can play tennis because I can hit the ball better. But is there much point of having fantastic technique if I can't find the ball? If I'm not efficient at just receiving the ball. So 80% of tennis from the shot cycle is receiving a ball. That's 80%. So 4 out of those 5 R's is finding the ball. It's not actually hitting it. One more video around tactics. So this game's called Off the Island. So he's got to use his technique. Whoops. Oh dear. What have I done? There we go. So he's got to use his technique to the best ability to drive it, to serve a purpose for his tactics. So also in this video, he's trying to get me off the island. And there's 3 stages here, which we'll go through. The idea is to go cross court. He's got to try and get me off the court. He's done that there with a bit of spin and direction. I have to stay off the court. He gets a 3 shot at this point. The second time, he can get me off the island again. I'm only allowed to hop back. Gets me there eventually. Here we go. I have to play the point hopping. There's a second point. This boy at the time, this is Roger at 10 years old. Next time I'm allowed to recover some of the way back. And then we play the point out. Too good for me there as well. And now we play for real. Once he gets me off the sideline, the point starts. He's got me off. Now he goes for it. So there's just a little example. There's plenty more examples on my page if you want to see more videos around that. And finally, guys, I noticed there's some messages, so I have a quick look at them at the moment. So it is 4 a.m. Well, it's not 4 a.m. in the morning anymore, but so I'm probably moving a little bit quick. So I apologize if I'm moving too fast. But again, you're more than welcome to ask me any questions afterwards. Here are the elements of what I believe is a successful program. Yes, it does have lessons, so that's more an instructional part. Is there a play element? So do they have a chance to develop that autonomy? Do they get a chance to go out and practice? I structured actual free play practice sessions, where I call it corporate warrior practice, where I said, look, at 4 o'clock on a Sunday, I'm going to be there. It's my daughter's favorite part of the week. I'm going to be there. I'm just going to get you guys playing some points. I'm going to structure it, but ultimately, I'm not going to coach you, just going to play. And in the lessons, it's more structured. Today, we're going to have themes of lessons. We're going to have fundamental volume training, where they're going to be doing the absolute basics, and we're going to hone into those skills. We're going to do motor skill development. All that is structured. But the players, like free play, I encourage the kids to play outside in their own time, play their own practice matches. I have a reward system at the center where they get, it's like a big game where every time they turn up to lessons, they get points. Every time they turn up to practice, they get more points. So I encourage them to play more than they do lessons, so they make sense of the lessons. They also get points to come to social events. They also accumulate points for entering all competition, and then they get points for getting outcomes in the competition as well. So it's not sort of either or. You know, I'm gonna reward you for turning up to the competition, and I'm also going to reward you for winning matches as well. So the reward and recognition is always there. And the 5th one is the parent communication. So the kids get points as well when the parents turn up to seminars. So if we're doing a webinar, but most of the stuff I do is more face-to-face. parent seminars, and what they do is once they accumulate 100 points, they get a silver medal. Once they accumulate 200 points, they get a gold medal. Once they accumulate 500 points, which is pretty tough, they get a t-shirt with their name on it, and it says "I'm on fire," and it's pretty cool. This is all sponsored through Bounce. And when they get 1,000 points, they get a trophy with their name on it. So it's the rewards and recognition is very much there for motivation, and I don't want to reward them just for coming for lessons. If I'm consistent with my philosophy of competence, autonomy, and purpose, all these elements will be in place. They're not going to be competent, have autonomy, and possibly they're going to lack purpose if it's just about lessons or just about play or just about social. So it's getting all those elements and making them stick together. I guess it's question time. So sorry if I'm moving quick. I just feel like there's a bit of a time constraint, so I'm doing the best I can with that. But any questions now? I'm happy. I mean, I have a lesson at 6:30, which is an hour and a half, but I'm not saying we should stay on here for an hour and a half. But any questions that you have, I'm more than happy to stay for another 15, 20 minutes. So
Hey, Nick.
I'll hand it over to Fabio and Sian, if that's okay. I'll take this page.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for, we had you under pressure there jumping in. You did a great job. Appreciate again. Sorry about the mix up in time, but good job on, yeah, it was a great presentation. Very, very interesting. There was one thing and maybe I got wrong when speaking before this I think it was to Barry here. You mentioned Evolve 9 and you'd mentioned Evolution Kids Tennis to me. So I got confused between the two. Is there any correlation between Evolve 9 and Evolution Kids Tennis?
Yeah, it's easy to get confused. I guess I get this question quite a lot. So Evolve 9 is the coach development team. There's about 7 or 8 of us that are on that team, and the Evolution is the program that's evolved from Evolve 9, if that makes sense. Okay. So Evolve 9 is a group of coaches and a team of directors. And so what I do for Evolve 9, my biggest role in Evolve 9 and the Evolution is developing content. So I do a lot of the videos and help out with the ideas around practices and things like that. Mike Bell is the director and founder of Evolve 9, so he's kind of the brainchild, and we all kind of work together with him to share ideas and just build he likes to call it a Jedi coaching team. But Evolution is the program that's come out of that. So
thanks
for Evolve program from the original Hot Shots program. Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up. Keane is going to jump in there with any questions that we may have. Not sure if any have come in there, but Keane will fire away.
Yeah, we have a few. So Nick, we'll start you off with a very, very easy one. William's looking for your webpage address. Now, I'll make sure Fabio and myself included it in the email to all participants, but maybe you can just say what your web address is.
Okay, so the Evolution website is www.evolution.net, evolutiontennis.net. So it's Evolution Kids Tennis. So that's the website. Is that what you're referring to, the website or my
yeah
page?
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Like I was only going to say maybe you could say it. I'll make sure to include it in the email, so it's not a problem. William, yeah. You'll have it written down. So
so Evolution Kids Tennis is the program that I work with. And the program that we have here at the Albany Tennis Park. So the videos that you see are all at Albany Tennis Park, and that's the program that we deliver here. The CAP is my own coaching philosophy, which is very much aligned to Evolution Kids Tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect. So a question here from Jason, and I know you talked a bit about the receiving and the sending in your presentation, but Jason has a question. What are your thoughts on drop feeding to players? Because some coaches are kind of for it, some coaches are kind of against it because they feel like you want to learn both simultaneously. What are your thoughts on drop feeding?
So any kind of feeding for me is it's funny because when you're working with beginners, it's hard, but it needs to be more chaotic. So they need to be able to understand that they're trying to play tennis, but the feeding is there obviously to create some kind of feel. So ironically, the more feeding you do is more for advanced players because they're working on specific shots. But I don't have a problem with any type of feeding. It's because it's very easy to say you should do that or you shouldn't do that, but again, if you don't know that, I mean, if I see somebody feeding, I wouldn't really have an opinion when I first see it, because I'm like, I don't know why, I don't know the purpose of this child or what they're trying to do. So the child might say, hey, look, I want to do all this receiving skills, that's fine, but I also want to have the sensation of hitting, because I like hitting a tennis ball. So, but at the moment, my tennis level is not that good, so I can't rally as much as I want to. So can we spend a little bit of time when I'm just hitting the ball, I can feel it. And then you're educating them at the same time, saying, hey, but ultimately, if you want to play tennis, you've got to find it first and then feel it. But you might want to allocate a little bit of time just so they can feel the sensation of the ball hitting the strings. But the more feeding you do, it's more for the advanced players, because now they're wanting specific balls to work on. You know, it could be a low ball or a high ball, whether you hand feed that or you feed it from distance. It's all very individual to the player. But there obviously is a place for feeding. So I don't want anyone to leave this thinking, oh, Nick thinks you should be doing feeding, because that's not the case at all. But yeah, I mean, drop feeding, if it's relevant to what the kid wants, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It almost depends on context, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a question here from Barry. Barry's talking about when you talked about the competition points collection. Barry says, is that similar to a junior tennis passport? Now, I haven't heard of a junior tennis passport. Maybe you have?
No, I'm not sure what that is. I mean, and with the points, this is all what the competition that I was talking about was more for the under 10s.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is we have an internal competition, and then external to that, if they want to play tournaments outside, there's normally like a point system, like a ranking system, things like that. But at the under 10 level, we make the competitions more like a festival. So when they come, we play, we do motor skill games at the beginning, where it's kind of like an icebreaker, and it introduces them to the day. And then we play lots of competitions. Now, lots of matches rather, what happens during this 3-hour period of the competition, they earn points through behavior, because behaviors are the main drivers of the program. And that could be showing respect to the opponent. It could be being a great competitor. It could be exploring and trying new things. So they get behavioral points as well, and they also get points for winning their matches. But this is all internal, just to develop them as a tennis player. External tournaments are typically you turn up, you have a match at a certain time, you win the match, you get points. That's always going to happen. You know, that's the nature of tennis rankings. But from the early stages, we just want to make sure that their messages are very much of like, we're trying to develop the character, we're trying to develop resilience, and when they go to external tournaments, they do understand that there's other formats as well, but we're doing it ultimately as part of the program to develop the child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a question here from Jamela. She has an 11-year-old son. He's training and playing with the yellow balls. Any tips on keeping him focused or interested as he gets older in the game?
I would say that the one thing at 11 is like start to develop a bit of a game self. Where they start to develop an understanding of how they want to play. So I would say the big thing is for them is like, be very careful. You know, when we talked about purpose, like the coach's passion can destroy the child's development, because I might want you to play a certain way. Like I'm 6'4.5", let's say round it up to 6'5". Am I going to teach my daughter? And I grew up in I'm born in '78, so I grew up when I started playing tennis, it was like early '90s, and I was serving volley. Am I going to teach her to serve and volley because that's how I love to play? No. So I want, you know, her personality is different. You know, even though she's my daughter, she's not a mini version of me. So,
yeah.
If I left her to her own devices, she wants to hit lots of backhand slices. She likes to fiddle around a little bit. She doesn't like to go to the net. She likes to play from the baseline, hit big, and then mix it up by using different types of spins. So I've got to understand that, and I've got to understand that she likes to play with variety. And I could say to her, hey, look, girls tennis, ultimately you got to hit the ball big, you got to hit the ball fast. I could, but if I want her to stay passionate about tennis, I want her to express herself on the court and play how she wants to play. And then during that time, I might give her advice on high percentage type of tennis and better tactical options, of course. But I would say the advice I give to your son is make sure that you understand his emotional mental, physical, technical, and tactical traits, and let him discover how he wants to play, and then you're just there to guide and help him, guide a discovery and help him find that game style, that game self.
Yeah, so basically, like what you talked about, all seems to evolve around fun on the tennis court and keeping it light, but still kind of on the right track. How do you deal with kids that maybe get distracted, especially at the younger ages? Maybe something happens on the other court beside them and maybe they just lose focus or lose interest. How do you kind of deal with that?
Is this during a match or practice?
No, during a training session.
Just during a training session.
Yeah.
So the big thing for me that I've found has been successful with that type of thing is rewarding behaviors. And we have 4 behaviors in the evolution program, which is respect, train, compete, and explore. So we always, again, that's the real driver. So the real emphasis on, if you want them to listen and you want them to behave, if your main driver is the outcome or how many balls they can get in or who they beat, then you may struggle controlling that type of behavior. When if the behaviors are the main driver and the main focus, and the rewards and the recognition and the praise is all based on the behavior. I mean, it could be that they competed so well that they won the match, where you say, hey, look, that was great competing. I love the way you chased that ball down, and as a result of that, you've won the match. So it's got to be linked to that. But when it comes down to like, how do I get them to stick focused? The constant alignment has to be around the behaviors, and we reward them through giving them wristbands and XP points that we have on the gaming apps as well. So behavior is the big one. If you can get the behavior right, if they become adult parents rather, when the kids are coachable, they become often employable. So ultimately, if I can coach the behavior, then they're more likely to listen to me and become stronger kids. So behavior is the big one.
What happens if you have kids that maybe aren't at like the top tier, like the top level in your club? Maybe they're like a tier underneath and they're kind of getting left behind in terms of competitions and tournaments. And obviously, I think it's only natural that you kind of measure yourself up against someone else. Have you come across that? Do you have any experience with that? And what would you recommend in that situation?
Again, I think that's where the diagnosis comes in. Like, if you're accurate with your diagnosis, like you might be saying, okay, you're falling behind, you need to do more lessons. Could make it worse, and probably make them a bit more anxious, because now they're forking out more money for the lessons, and you're giving them more instruction, but is that what they really needed? So I think to understand a child's development, we've got to really understand is like, is there an element missing? Are they practicing enough? Do they play enough by themselves? Are they resilient enough? Are they going out and playing enough practice matches during the week? If they do fall behind, it's the education around the parents, around that there are different islands. Like you can't keep everybody happy. Like, for example, last week I had a parent that wanted their child in the elite academy that we have, and to get in the elite academy, there's criteria and there's certain rules in place. So, for example, if you want to be in the elite academy, you have to compete in 80% of the tournaments provided internally, which is not that hard to do. It's achievable. You have to do at least 2 group lessons a week, and you have to come to the practice. That's the criteria for the academy, because it's more edgy and it's more competitive. Now, this child entered 1 event in 2 years, came to 2 practices out of about 20, and is often late for the lessons. So I said, it's all written that there's a rules and regulations of being in a certain elite group, and this child didn't meet any of them. And so it didn't matter that this was given to them, or didn't matter that it was resent. They were never going to be happy with it, because this parent believes that the ability that the child had was enough to get them in the group. It's like, well, but that's not the right message for the other kids, and it's not the right message for him either. That he's not putting the hours, he's not putting the time in. So it's all very well having ability, but actually he wasn't even the strongest in the group either. He was kind of like towards the bottom. So there was no justification putting him in the group. This doesn't happen that often if the communication is clear to the parents, and there's enough visuals around as well to say that this is the criteria of the program. This is how you get to that group. That's how you get to that one, and so forth. But you're always going to get a few problems here and there, of course.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. We have a question here from John, and maybe this is an interesting one from a coach's perspective. John's saying, how do you get your players to let the ball drop into their optimal hitting zone? When he has the players catch the ball, they do great, but when they have the racket in their hand, it doesn't seem to carry over all the time. Any tips or any experience with that?
Yeah, so there you've got, so let me get this right. So that the child's able to find the ball, okay?
Yeah, when he gets them to catch the ball, yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to the hitting,
exactly, when the racket's in hand.
I guess the natural question I would have there is like, are you exploring distances? Like, is it a perception? Like, are they able to catch it when it's within 2 meters, but are they able to do it when it's 6-7 feet away or 20 feet away? So it could be some work on perception. So we need to understand two things. We need to understand where the ball is going to land, of course, but then we need to understand what's going to happen after it lands. So there's two flights. There's a flight that when the ball goes in the air, and the second flight's when it hits the ground. So if I throw a ball to you now, and we're 3 feet away out of the hand, it might be easy to read the first flight, but very difficult to read the second flight if I'm actually hitting it with a racket that's got spin on it. So it's understand the two different types of flights, the one out of my racket and the one when it hits the ground. So catching a ball where the ball just sort of drops into your pocket or into your waist area, and then receiving a ball when it's got spin on it, when it's further away, is quite a different thing. So you might want to explore the different distances and different types of spin that the ball has, because they might be picking up the first flight, but might struggle with the second flight.
Okay, perfect. Well, look, Nick, thanks a lot for answering all those questions. We have a few more, but we try to keep the sessions relatively short. So thanks a lot for answering all of those. And I'll just pass you back to Fabio just to end it off here.
Nick, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. We'll send this out. This was recorded, so we send it out to everybody in the next 24 hours. And if any questions, I'll put your details in there. They can connect you. They can message you directly. Appreciate it. Keep up the great videos, and thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. We'll have plenty more webinars. Check out our podcast. Also, a great episode went live yesterday. And yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for everybody that turned up to listen to me. It was definitely worth getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning for. It's always a pleasure to help as many people as possible. But and Fabio, you got a fantastic program going on there as well. So it's a real honor to be involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you guys. Thanks all for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.